The massive alien ship hung in space above Earth like a silver moon. Commander Vexlar stood at the observation deck, his crystalline body reflecting the blue glow of the planet below. He had visited hundreds of worlds in his long life, but this one was different. This world held a species the Galactic Council knew almost nothing about. "They call themselves humans," said his second officer, a shorter Arconian named Krell. "Our scans show they are physically unremarkable. No natural weapons, no enhanced strength, no armor plating. Their bodies are fragile." Vexlar nodded slowly. "What about their technology? Primitive, by our standards. They have only just achieved basic, faster-than-light travel. Their weapons are crude. Their ships are slow." Krell pulled up a display showing various human cities. "They seem to excel at building and creating art. Perhaps they would make good administrators or cultural workers." From across the room, a deep voice laughed. War Chief Drakmor of the Kralon Empire stepped forward, his massive frame covered in thick scales and natural armor. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with claws that could tear through steel. "Cultural workers? Look at them. They are prey animals. Soft skin, weak bodies, no natural defenses. My people could conquer their world in a single day. We are here for diplomacy, not conquest," Vexlar reminded him, though his tone was mild. He knew the Kralon spoke the truth. Humans appeared to be one of the weakest species the Council had ever encountered. Down on Earth, President Helen Carter stood in the newly built Unity Station, a space platform created specifically for this historic meeting. She wore a simple blue suit, her gray hair pulled back in a neat style. Beside her stood Daniel Brooks, a career diplomat with decades of experience in international relations. He looked nervous. "They've been watching us for months," Daniel said quietly. "Every transmission we send, they barely respond. I think they've already decided we're not important." Helen frowned. "Then we change their minds. We show them what humanity can offer." "And what's that exactly?" Daniel asked. "Our technology is centuries behind theirs. Our military strength is nothing compared to what their scans must show. We're walking into this negotiation from a position of complete weakness. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars," Helen said firmly. "We've walked on our moon, split the atom, and decoded our own DNA. We're still here, Daniel. That counts for something." Behind them, Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison stood at attention. He was a military advisor, brought along because the Council had requested a security presence from Earth's delegation. Jake was 42, with short brown hair going gray at the temples and a scar along his jawline from a training accident years ago. He said nothing, but his eyes constantly scanned the station, noting exits and sightlines out of pure habit. With him was Dr. Lisa Kim, a biologist and anthropologist who had been studying the limited information available about alien species. She clutched a tablet containing her presentation on human culture and achievement. Marcus Wright, a former teacher turned cultural ambassador, stood beside her reviewing his notes one last time. The final member of their group was Captain Amy Chen, the pilot who had flown them up to the station. She was young, only 30, but one of the best pilots in the human space program. She leaned against a wall, looking relaxed, but Jake noticed her hand never strayed far from the radio at her belt. A tone sounded through the station. The aliens were ready to receive them. The delegation moved through the airlock into the Zenith Prime, the Council's diplomatic vessel. The interior was beautiful, with walls that seemed to shimmer with inner light and gravity that adjusted perfectly to human comfort. A demonstration of technology far beyond Earth's capability. They were led to a vast chamber where 7 alien species waited. Vexlar stood at the center, his crystalline form glowing softly. To his right stood Drakmor, looking even more massive in person. The other council members represented species humanity had never seen. A being made of what looked like flowing water, another covered in feathers that changed color, a creature that seemed to phase in and out of visibility. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Vexlar said. His mouth didn't move, but his voice appeared directly in their minds, translated perfectly into English. "We are the Galactic Council. We maintain peace and order among 3,000 inhabited worlds." Helen stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, we thank you for this meeting. We hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples." Druckmore snorted, a sound like rocks grinding together. Daniel's face reddened, but Helen raised a hand to stop him from responding. "We may not have your technology or your physical advantages, but we have much to offer. Our art, our music, our literature, pretty things," Druckmore interrupted. "But the galaxy is not a safe place for pretty things. It is a place where the strong survive and the weak serve or perish." Vexlar sent a sharp mental rebuke to the Kralon, then turned back to Helen. "Please, forgive my colleague's bluntness. What he means is that the galaxy has many dangers. Pirates, rogue factions, territorial disputes. Species without adequate defenses often find themselves in difficult positions." "You mean we would need protection?" Helen said flatly. "We would offer it gladly," Vexlar said smoothly, "in exchange for certain agreements. Limited territorial claims, for instance. Trade agreements that favor the Council's economic interests. Restrictions on military development." Jake's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. This was not his arena. He was here to observe and protect, nothing more. Lisa Kim spoke up. "We've survived on our world for hundreds of thousands of years without outside protection. We've faced extinction events, climate shifts, and countless challenges. We're still here." One of the other council members, a feathered being named Cheer, made a trilling sound that the translators rendered as laughter. "You faced challenges on a single world, against unintelligent beasts and natural disasters. The galaxy contains beings who could destroy your entire planet with weapons you cannot imagine. We understand that," Marcus said carefully. "We're not claiming to be warriors or conquerors. We simply want to join the galactic community as partners, not subordinates." "Partnerships require something to offer," Druckmore said. "What do you bring to the Council besides requests and needs?" The meeting continued for hours. The humans presented their case with dignity and intelligence. They showed recordings of Earth's achievements, samples of human culture, and proposals for scientific cooperation. The Council members listened politely, but their body language, different as it was across species, showed the same thing. They were not impressed. Finally, Vexlar made his offer. "The Council has decided to grant Earth provisional membership. You will have limited voting rights and must accept a Kralon protection force in your system. You may claim only your home world and your moon. Any expansion beyond that requires Council approval. These terms are non-negotiable for species at your development level." Helen looked at her delegation. Daniel looked angry. Marcus seemed defeated. Lisa appeared thoughtful. Jake's expression hadn't changed at all. "We need time to consider these terms," Helen said. "Of course," Vexlar agreed. "We will wait for your answer. But understand, these are generous terms for a species in your position. Without Council protection, you would be vulnerable to every threat in the galaxy." As the human delegation returned to Unity Station, no one spoke until they were safely back in their own ship. Then Daniel exploded. "They're treating us like children, like primitives who need their supervision. They're treating us exactly how we appear to them," Lisa said quietly. "Physically weak, technologically inferior, strategically vulnerable. From their perspective, they're being generous." Helen sat down heavily. "We need to show them they're wrong. But how?" Jake Morrison finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "We wait. Sooner or later, they'll see what we really are. The question is whether it happens on our terms or someone else's." None of them knew how soon that moment would come, or how violently it would shatter every assumption the Galactic Council had made about humanity. 2 weeks had passed since the first meeting. The negotiations continued aboard the Zenith Prime, though progress was slow. Earth had sent a smaller delegation to continue talks, while President Carter consulted with world governments about the Council's terms. Jake Morrison sat in the human quarters, reviewing security protocols for the 10th time. With him were Lisa Kim and Amy Chen. The rest of the Earth delegation had returned home, but these three remained to represent humanity's interests. They still don't take us seriously, Amy said, looking at a datapad. I tried to offer suggestions for their shuttle bay operations. They literally patted me on the head and told me it was cute that I wanted to help. Lisa smiled, despite herself. I gave a presentation on human immune system adaptability yesterday. Vexlar thanked me for the charming educational content and suggested I might enjoy teaching children when we get home. Jake said nothing. He had stopped trying to offer security assessments after Drakmor had laughed in his face and told him that humans knew nothing of real combat. The ship's alarm system suddenly blared to life. The walls flashed red. A voice spoke in the Council's trade language, then switched to English for the humans' benefit. Alert. Unknown vessels approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. 17. Jake was on his feet instantly. Amy, get to our shuttle. Lisa, stay with the Council members. I'm going to the bridge. He ran through the corridors, his military training taking over. Other aliens rushed past him in panic, some species he had never seen before. No one tried to stop him as he entered the bridge. Vexlar stood at the center, his crystalline body pulsing with agitated light. Around him, officers worked at stations that looked like works of art, but functioned as tactical displays. What's the situation? Jake asked. Vexlar turned, surprised to see the human. Pirates. A large fleet. They are known as the Ravagers. They attack diplomatic vessels for ransom. He paused. You should return to your quarters. This does not concern Earth. I'm a military officer. Let me help. Drakmor, who stood nearby in full combat armor, laughed. Help? Human. My people have fought wars for 10,000 years. Your entire species has barely left its homeworld. Stay out of the way. Jake looked at the tactical display. 30 hostile ships surrounded them. The Council had only 12 security vessels, and they were designed for show more than combat. He had seen this kind of mismatch before. It never ended well. How long until reinforcements arrive? He asked. 6 hours, Vexlar admitted. We have sent distress signals. You don't have 6 hours, Jake said, studying the enemy formation. They'll board you in 20 minutes. Drakmor snarled. We will fight them off. The Kralon do not surrender. Jake watched as the first exchange of fire began. The Council's security ships moved in precise formations, firing in controlled bursts. They fought with discipline and honor. They also started losing immediately. The Ravagers fought dirty. They targeted engines and life support. They used the debris from destroyed ships as cover. They coordinated their attacks with brutal efficiency. Within 10 minutes, half the Council's security force was gone. Begin evacuation procedures. Vexlar ordered. All diplomats to escape pods. Jake ran back to the human quarters. Lisa had already gathered their essential equipment. Amy was on her radio, arguing with someone. They won't let me launch the Eagle's Nest, she said, referring to their shuttle. They say it's too small to make a difference. They're probably right, Lisa said quietly. Our weapons are nothing compared to theirs. Jake looked out the viewport. The Ravager ships were closing in, their hulls scarred and painted with symbols that looked like kill counts. These weren't honorable warriors. These were predators who had found easy prey. Amy, get to the shuttle anyway. Be ready to launch on my signal. What signal? She asked. You'll know it when you see it. The ship shuddered as something impacted the hull. The lights flickered. Through the walls, they could hear the screech of metal being torn apart. They're boarding us, Lisa said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Jake checked his sidearm. A simple 9mm pistol that was primitive by galactic standards. He had 6 magazines, 48 rounds total. Not much, but it was what he had. They moved toward the central chamber where the council members were gathering. Aliens of every description huddled together, some crying, some praying in languages the translators couldn't parse. The council's security forces had formed a perimeter, but Jake could see the fear in their body language. Drakmor stood at the front, his massive weapon ready. But even he looked uncertain. The Krallon were warriors, yes, but they fought wars with rules and honor codes. The Ravagers had neither. Vexlar was coordinating the evacuation when Jake approached him. How long until the escape pods are ready? 3 minutes. But the Ravagers have already breached 3 sections. They will reach us before we can evacuate. Then we hold them here. Drakmor turned to look at Jake. You? You think you can fight them? I think I can slow them down. One of the security officers, a being that looked like an insect standing upright, clicked something that the translator rendered as, "The human is brave, but foolish." This is not his fight. It became my fight when I came aboard this ship, Jake said. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. The sound of weapons charging filled the air. The security forces raised their weapons, hands shaking. The first Ravager appeared around the corner. It was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, covered in thick armor and carrying a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. Behind it came more, a mix of species all united by greed and violence. Their leader stepped forward, a renegade Krallon even larger than Drakmor. Scars covered his scales, and one eye had been replaced with a glowing mechanical implant. "I am Grask," he announced. "You are all prisoners now. Surrender, and you will live long enough to be ransomed. Resist, and die." The council security forces looked at each other. Several lowered their weapons. They were trained for ceremonial duties and minor disputes, not this kind of combat. Drakmor roared and raised his weapon, but Vexlar placed a mental command in his mind. "No, protect the diplomats. That is our duty." Jake stepped forward, moving past the security line. Every alien eye turned to him. The human. The weak one. The species that needed protection. "You're making a mistake," Jake said calmly. Grask stared at him, then burst out laughing. His crew joined in, the sound echoing through the chamber. "A human? They sent a human to negotiate with us? You are even weaker than the reports suggested." "I'm not here to negotiate," Jake said. His hand moved to his weapon, but he didn't draw it yet. "Then what? You will fight us?" Grask gestured to his crew. "There are 12 of us. We are armed with weapons that can melt through steel. We are wearing armor that can withstand plasma fire. And you are a soft-skinned mammal with a primitive projectile weapon." "Yes," Jake said simply. Lisa, watching from behind, wanted to scream at him to stop. This was suicide. But she saw something in his stance, in the way he had positioned himself. This wasn't bravado. This was calculation. "This should be amusing," Grask said. "Kill him quickly. We have a ship to loot." The Ravagers raised their weapons. Jake's hand moved to his pistol, and then everything changed. Jake drew and fired in one motion. The movement so fast that several aliens didn't even register it. His first shot took the Ravager on Grask's right in the throat, finding the gap between armor plates. The alien went down, choking. Before the body hit the ground, Jake was moving. Not backward to cover, but forward, directly at the enemy. It was the last thing they expected. His second shot hit a weapon, causing it to explode in its owner's hands. His third shot found an eye, the one weak point in an armored face. He moved like water, never where the return fire aimed, always finding angles the Ravagers didn't expect. In 5 seconds, 3 Ravagers were down. Grask roared and charged, his massive frame barreling forward. Jake didn't try to match his strength. Instead, he slid under the charge, using Grask's momentum against him. As the large alien stumbled past, Jake shot him twice in the back of the knee joint, where the armor was thinnest. Grask crashed to the ground with a bellow of pain and rage. The remaining Ravagers opened fire, their weapons tearing up the walls and floor. But Jake was already gone, rolling behind a support pillar. He came out the other side, firing precisely, each shot finding a weak point or critical system. The council members watched in stunned silence. This wasn't how combat worked in the galaxy. Galactic species fought with honor, with strength against strength, with technology against technology. Jake fought to win. A Ravager tried to flank him. Jake spun and threw his empty pistol at the alien's face, causing it to flinch. In that moment, he closed the distance, grabbed the Ravager's weapon arm, and used a joint lock that worked regardless of species anatomy. The weapon clattered to the floor. Jake picked it up and used it to stun 2 more pirates. In 90 seconds, 12 Ravagers lay on the ground, dead or incapacitated. Jake stood among them, breathing hard, but still ready. Grask tried to rise, but Jake was there. The captured alien weapon pointed at his head. "Stay down," Jake said quietly. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Every alien stared at the human who had just done the impossible. Drakmor's mouth hung open. Vexlar's crystalline body pulsed with colors that indicated complete shock. Amy's voice crackled over Jake's radio. "Jake, I'm launching. Those ships outside are getting too close, and I'm not sitting here, waiting to die." Jake allowed himself a small smile. "Copy that. Make them regret it." Through the viewport, they watched as the small human shuttle, barely the size of a Ravager fighter, shot out of the bay and into the battle space. What Amy Chen did next would become legendary across the galaxy. But that was a story for another moment. For now, every being in that chamber had to confront a simple, terrifying truth. They had been wrong about humans. Very, very wrong. Outside the Zenith Prime, Amy Chen gripped the controls of the Eagle's Nest with steady hands. The shuttle was small, built for transport, not combat. It had 2 light defensive cannons and shields designed to protect against micrometeors, not military-grade weapons. 3 Ravager fighters spotted her immediately and changed course to intercept. Each one was 5 times her size and carried enough firepower to reduce her shuttle to atoms. "Come on then," Amy muttered, pushing the throttle forward. Back in the Zenith Prime's bridge, the tactical officer watched in disbelief. The human shuttle is accelerating toward the enemy fighters. Is their pilot insane? Vexlar, still processing what Jake had done in the corridor, could only say, "Perhaps insanity is a human trait we failed to catalog." Amy flew like nothing the Ravagers had ever encountered. She didn't try to outrun them or seek cover. She flew directly at them. Then, at the last possible moment, executed a turn that should have torn her ship apart. The Ravager fighters, expecting her to break away, fired where she should have been. Instead, she was behind them. Her cannons were weak, but she knew exactly where to shoot. She targeted sensor arrays, engine exhausts, communication dishes. Not kill shots, but crippling ones. The Ravager fighters spun in confusion as their systems failed one after another. "She fights like a pilot with nothing to lose," observed one of the Council's tactical officers. "No," Drakmor said, watching the display with new understanding. "She fights like a pilot who knows exactly what she is doing. This is not desperation. This is skill." Amy's shuttle danced through the battlefield, too unpredictable to target effectively. She used debris as cover, executed impossible maneuvers, and turned every disadvantage into an advantage. When her shields finally failed, she used the damage section to vent atmosphere, creating thrust that pushed her into a spin that avoided 3 incoming missiles. The Ravager fleet began to lose cohesion. They were used to fighting opponents who followed predictable patterns. The human pilot followed no pattern at all. Meanwhile, inside the ship, Jake secured the corridor and immediately moved to the next breach point. He could hear fighting in the distance. More Ravagers had boarded in other sections. Lisa stayed with the council members, trying to explain what they had witnessed. Vexlar approached her, his mental voice urgent. How is this possible? Our scans showed humans have no enhanced reflexes, no combat adaptations. What we just saw should not be possible for your species. Lisa took a breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for, though not in these circumstances. Commander, you scanned our bodies but not our history. Humans are not built for combat in the way you understand it. We did not evolve armor or claws or venom. We evolved something else. What? Endurance. Problem solving. The ability to turn anything into a weapon and any environment into an advantage. She pulled up files on her tablet, her hands shaking slightly. On Earth, humans are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not the most dangerous in any single category. But we survived by being the most adaptable. We learned to hunt animals bigger and stronger than us. We learned to thrive in every climate. We learned to fight. Another alien spoke up, the insectoid security officer. But fighting requires training, discipline, years of practice. Your Lieutenant Colonel Morrison moved like a master warrior. He is a master warrior, Lisa confirmed. But the basics of what you saw, every human child learns. We teach our young to fight from an early age because our history required it. Drakmor listened carefully. As a warrior himself, he recognized the truth in her words. You said he turned anything into a weapon. He used the environment, the enemy's own strength, even their expectations against them. Yes, humans call it tactics, strategy. We have spent thousands of years refining the art of defeating enemies who should be able to defeat us. Lisa pulled up an image of ancient human warriors. Our ancestors fought with stones and sticks against predators with fangs and claws. Later, we fought each other with ever more sophisticated weapons. We have 10,000 years of continuous warfare in our history. The chamber fell silent. 10,000 years of warfare. The council species had known peace for most of their development, with only occasional conflicts. The idea of constant, sustained combat evolution was alien to them. But you seem so peaceful, Vexlar said. Your diplomats, your culture, your art. Nothing suggested this capacity for violence. Because we choose peace, Lisa said firmly. Having the capacity for violence and choosing to use it are different things. Humans learned long ago that endless war serves no one. But we never forgot how to fight. We just prefer not to. An explosion rocked the ship. Jake's voice came over the communication system. Second breach point secured. How many more? The tactical officer checked. 3 more boarding parties. They are heading for the engine room, the bridge, and the medical bay. I will take the engine room, Jake said. Send your security forces to the other locations. Drakmor growled. I will go with you, human. No offense, but you will slow me down, Jake replied. Your armor is thick, but it makes you slower. These corridors need speed. It was an insult by Kraylon standards. Drakmor should have been enraged. Instead, he felt something he rarely experienced. Respect. Then I will defend the bridge. But human, when this is over, you and I will speak of combat. Jake was already moving. He navigated the ship's corridors with purpose, his weapon ready. He had taken several alien weapons from the first group of Ravagers, and he understood how they worked. Humans were good at that too, adapting to new technology quickly. He reached the engine room to find 6 Ravagers trying to breach the door. They had a cutting tool that was slowly melting through the reinforced metal. Inside, he knew, were the engineering crew, unarmed and terrified. Jake evaluated the situation in seconds. 6 enemies, all armed and armored. The corridor was narrow with limited cover. A direct assault would be suicide for most species, so he did not assault them directly. He shot out the lights, plunging the corridor into darkness. The Ravagers had various vision types, but all of them needed a moment to adjust. Jake did not give them that moment. He moved in the darkness like he was born to it, using sound to locate targets. His shots were precise, taking out weapons before bodies. When one Ravager activated a light, Jake shot it immediately, preserving the darkness. The Ravagers began to panic. They could not see him, could not predict him, could not fight what they could not find. One by one, they fell. When the emergency lights finally activated, all 6 Ravagers were on the ground. Jake stood among them, reloading his weapon. The engineering crew opened the door cautiously. They stared at the human who had saved them, unable to speak. Jake simply nodded and moved on. 2 more breach points to secure. Back on the bridge, Amy's voice crackled through the communication system. She sounded out of breath but alive. I have 3 fighters disabled, and the rest are pulling back to protect their capital ships. I think I annoyed them. Vexlar looked at the tactical display. The human shuttle was damaged, venting atmosphere, and down to minimal power. By all rights, it should have been destroyed 10 times over. Yet it still flew, still fought, still survived. The Ravager fleet was in disarray. They had expected an easy target, a quick raid. Instead, they were losing ships to a single human pilot, and losing boarding parties to a single human soldier. Their commander, Captain Zrel, watched from his flagship in growing fury. He had raided hundreds of ships. He had fought council security forces, corporate militaries, even rogue military units. He had never seen anything like this. What are these humans? He demanded. His tactical officer brought up the data they had on Earth. A minor species, newly spacefaring, technologically primitive, no significant military capability. Then explain why we have lost 14 fighters and 3 boarding parties, Zrel roared. There was no explanation, not one that made sense. Jake cleared the 3rd breach point using a different tactic. He herded the Ravagers into a section of the ship, then sealed it and vented the atmosphere. It was brutal, but effective. The Ravagers, caught without proper void suits, were incapacitated in seconds. The final breach point, at the medical bay, was cleared when Jake simply walked up to the Ravagers and offered them a choice. Leave now, or end up like their companions. The Ravagers, who had monitored the fate of the other boarding parties, chose to leave. As they retreated to their ships, one of them looked back at Jake. What are you? What kind of species are you? Jake's response was simple. The kind you should not have attacked. The Ravager fleet, reduced and demoralized, began to withdraw. They had come for an easy prize and found only disaster. Captain Zrel made a note in his personal log. Avoid humans at all costs. As the last Ravager ship jumped to hyperspace, Amy brought the Eagle's Nest limping back to the Zenith Prime. The shuttle was barely functional, held together by hope and engineering tape. But it had survived. When Amy climbed out of the pilot's seat, she found a dozen alien species waiting to meet her. They stared at her like she was a legend made flesh. She just shrugged. Sorry about the dents in your fighter bay. That last landing was rough. In the main chamber, Jake returned to find every council member waiting for him. Vexlar approached slowly, his body language showing something between respect and fear. We owe you our lives, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. Just doing my job, Commander. No, Vexlar said firmly. This was far beyond duty. You faced impossible odds and prevailed. You showed us that our understanding of humanity was fatally flawed. Drakmor stepped forward and did something that shocked every Kralon present. He bowed his head to Jake, a gesture of respect given only to proven warriors. You are small, human. Your body is weak by our standards, but you fight with the cunning of a predator and the courage of a champion. I was wrong to dismiss your species. I was a fool. Jake looked around the chamber. Every alien eye was on him. They saw him differently now. not as a weak curiosity, but as something else, something dangerous. We are not warriors by choice, he said carefully. We do not seek conflict, but when conflict finds us, we know how to respond. That is what humans are, Commander Vexlar. We are survivors. And survivors do whatever it takes to keep surviving. Lisa joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. What you saw today was not exceptional for humanity. Jake is a trained soldier, yes. Amy is an experienced pilot, yes. But every human has this potential. We have all inherited the adaptability and determination of ancestors who refused to give up, no matter what they faced. The council members absorbed this information in silence. They had offered Earth a protective relationship because they thought humans were weak. Now, they realized they had offered protection to a species that might not need it. A species that could fight when pushed. A species that was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The question now was what to do with this knowledge, and whether humanity's relationship with the Galactic Council would ever be the same. The Galactic Council reinforcements arrived 6 hours later to find the crisis already resolved. The Zenith Prime was damaged but intact. The Ravager fleet was gone, having fled in defeat. And a human, just one human soldier and one human pilot, had accomplished what should have been impossible. The story spread through the galactic network with remarkable speed. Within a day, every major species had seen the footage. The Council's security systems had recorded everything. Jake's fight in the corridor, Amy's impossible flying, the Ravagers in full retreat. Military analysts from 100 worlds studied the recordings, trying to understand what they had witnessed. The footage was slowed down, examined frame by frame, discussed in military academies and strategic command centers. On the Zenith Prime, an emergency council session was called. All 7 member species sent their highest representatives. They gathered in the Great Chamber, but this time, the humans were not kept waiting outside. Jake, Lisa, and Amy were invited to sit as equals. Vexlar opened the session with unusual gravity in his mental voice. We are here to discuss the human question. Our initial assessment of their species was based on incomplete data. The events of yesterday have shown us that we were dangerously wrong. One of the other council members, the water-like being called Flo, spoke in a voice like rain. I have reviewed the combat footage 37 times. I still cannot fully comprehend what I witnessed. The human fought 12 armed opponents and defeated them in less than 2 minutes. This should not be possible for a species without natural weapons or enhanced physical abilities. Yet it happened, Drakmor said. He stood in his full ceremonial armor, but his posture toward Jake was different now. It held respect. I have fought in 17 campaigns across 9 systems. I have never seen combat like this. The human did not fight with honor or glory. He fought to win, using methods I have never encountered. Rupli Lekte. End quote. 1 Mendity 207. Those methods have names, Lisa said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She stood and activated a holographic display. Tactics. Strategy. Asymmetric warfare. Humans have been studying the art of combat for our entire existence. She pulled up images of Earth's history. 40,000 years ago, my ancestors were hunting woolly mammoths. These creatures stood 4 times our height, weighed 10 times our mass, and had tusks that could impale us easily. We hunted them anyway. We studied their behavior, created plans, worked in teams, and brought down prey that could kill us with a single blow. The chamber was silent as she continued. 10,000 years ago, humans developed agriculture and formed cities. With cities came armies. With armies came war. We fought each other for territory, resources, beliefs, survival. Every generation refined the methods. Every war taught us new lessons. She brought up more images. Ancient warriors with spears. Medieval knights in armor. Modern soldiers with rifles. We created weapons because we had no natural ones. We developed strategy because we could not rely on strength alone. We learned to fight in every environment because Earth gave us mountains, deserts, jungles, tundra, and oceans. We adapted to all of it. A council member from the Luminary Collective, beings of pure energy, flickered with confusion. But your diplomatic corps showed no signs of this. Your first contact protocols emphasized peace, cooperation. We do value harmony, Lisa confirmed. Because we know the cost of conflict. We have fought so many wars that we learned to hate them. We created laws, treaties, international cooperation. We built the United Nations to prevent war. We choose peace whenever possible. But you remember war, Vexlar said, understanding dawning. The capacity remains. Always, Lisa said. Humans have a saying. If you want peace, prepare for war. We are peaceful because we are strong enough to choose peace. Not because we are too weak to choose otherwise. Drakmor spoke again. When the human Morrison fought, he showed no hesitation, no mercy to those who would have killed him. He was efficient, cold. This is the mark of a true warrior. Jake shook his head. I am not cold, War Chief. I just understand priorities. When someone threatens innocent lives, you stop them. Quickly and completely. Hesitation gets people killed. You speak like someone with extensive combat experience, observed Cheer, the feathered council member. I have been a soldier for 22 years, Jake said. I have trained for combat since I was 18. Before that, I trained in martial arts as a child. Most humans do not have my level of training, but many have some training. We teach our children to defend themselves. It is part of our culture. Show us, Drakmor said suddenly. Show us your training methods. I wish to understand. Show us your training methods. Lisa pulled up footage from various human military training programs. The aliens watched as humans ran obstacle courses, practiced hand-to-hand combat, trained with weapons, studied tactics and strategy. They saw special forces training, where humans push their bodies to the absolute limit. They saw combat simulations, where soldiers learn to make split-second decisions under pressure. This is standard for your military? Vexlar asked. This is standard for our professional soldiers, Jake clarified. But millions of humans serve in militaries around the world. And even civilians often have basic training. Many learn to shoot, to fight, to survive in wilderness. It is part of being human. Flo rippled with something that might have been concern. You are a species that prepares every generation for war. We are a species that refuses to be helpless, Lisa corrected. There is a difference. We do not seek war, but we acknowledge that danger exists. We prepare for it. That preparation has saved us countless times throughout our history. 34. Clicking on 5 live. We 3 minds, end quote. And 7 minds. Amy Chen spoke for the first time in the meeting. Can I add something? When Vexlar gestured for her to continue, she said, You all seem focused on our combat abilities, but you are missing the point. We did not win yesterday because we are violent. We won because we are creative problem solvers. She stood and brought up the flight data from her shuttle. Look at this. My ship was outgunned, out-armored, and outnumbered. By every tactical analysis, I should have been destroyed in the first 30 seconds. But I was not trying to win a fair fight. I was trying to survive and disrupt the enemy. So, I used unconventional maneuvers, targeted unexpected systems, and flew in ways that their tactical computers did not predict. You flew insane patterns, one of the tactical officers said. I flew human patterns, Amy corrected. Patterns developed by pilots who had to fight superior enemies. We learn from history. Earth has 100 years of aerial combat experience. Thousands of pilots have contributed to our understanding of flight combat. I used all of that knowledge yesterday. Lisa nodded. This is what makes humans dangerous. Not our bodies, not our weapons, but our minds. We observe, we learn, we adapt, we overcome. Every problem is a puzzle to solve. Every obstacle is a challenge to defeat. She brought up data on human problem-solving abilities. We have sent robots to other planets. We have cured diseases that killed millions. We have built machines that can think. We have split the atom and decoded our own genetic structure. We have done all of this in the last 100 years, all of it through the same process. Identify the problem, study it, experiment, adapt, succeed. And combat is just another problem to solve. Drakmor said, his voice thoughtful. Exactly, Jake confirmed. When those Ravagers attacked, I did not see an impossible fight. I saw a problem with multiple solutions. Narrow corridor favors close combat. Multiple enemies require quick elimination to prevent being overwhelmed. Superior armor and weapons require precise targeting of weak points. I processed all of this in seconds and acted accordingly. This is terrifying, Cheer said bluntly. You are saying that every human has this capability? To varying degrees, yes, Lisa said. Some humans are better at combat, some at engineering, some at medicine, some at art. But all of us share the basic traits: adaptability, persistence, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat. Vexlar was quiet for a long moment. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. We offered Earth a protective relationship because we believed you were weak and needed our help. We now understand that this was presumptuous and ignorant. The question becomes, what relationship should we have with humanity? That depends on what you want, Jake said carefully. We came seeking friendship and partnership. We still want that. But we will not accept being treated as inferiors or children who need supervision. You could be a powerful military ally, Drakmor said. The Kralon Empire would value a mutual defense treaty with Earth. Or you could be a threat, Flo said quietly. A species that can fight so effectively could also conquer. What prevents you from becoming the aggressors? Lisa had been waiting for this question. Our history prevents it. We know where that path leads. Earth has seen empires rise and fall. We have seen the cost of conquest and domination. In our most recent global war, 70 years ago, over 70 million humans died. Cities were destroyed. Entire populations were devastated. We learned from that horror. She pulled up images of Earth's United Nations, its peacekeeping forces, its international treaties. We learned to cooperate instead of conquer. We learned that working together creates better outcomes than fighting. We are not perfect at it. We still have conflicts. But we are trying. And we will extend that same principle to the galaxy. You say this now, Cheer challenged. But what about future generations? What about when Earth becomes powerful enough to threaten others? Jake answered this one. Then you hold us accountable. Make us part of the galactic community with real responsibilities. Give us a stake in the peace and prosperity of all species. That is what prevents aggression. Mutual investment in each other's success. Drakmor stood and walked to the center of the chamber. He looked at Jake, then at the other humans, then at his fellow council members. I propose we grant Earth full membership in the Galactic Council. No restrictions. No probationary period. Full rights and full responsibilities. There was a murmur of surprise from several council members. Flo objected immediately. That is unprecedented. For a newly contacted species, these are not typical newly contacted species, Drakmor countered. They have proven themselves in combat. They have shown intelligence and restraint. They offer unique capabilities that could benefit the entire council. And frankly, after yesterday, I would rather have them as partners than leave them uncertain of their place in the galaxy. Vexlar considered this. There is wisdom in what you say, War Chief. But this decision cannot be made lightly. We need time to consider all implications. Then consider this, Lisa said. Earth does not need the Council. We can develop on our own, at our own pace, without your guidance or protection, but we want to be part of the galactic community. We want to learn from you, share with you, grow with you. That is what we are offering. Genuine partnership. Not because we need you, but because we value what we can build together. The council members looked at each other, exchanging glances and mental communications in their various ways. The dynamic had shifted completely. Humanity was no longer a weak species begging for entry. They were a potential equal, offering cooperation from a position of strength. We will deliberate on this, Vexlar said finally. But let me say this. My personal views on humanity have changed completely. I came to Earth expecting to meet primitives. Instead, I have met survivors, warriors, thinkers, and builders. Whatever the Council decides, I am honored to know your species. The meeting adjourned, but Jake, Lisa, and Amy knew the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had seen what one human could do in combat. Now, they would see what humanity could do in peace, and that, perhaps, would be even more impressive. Jake Morrison stood at the podium in the Grand Hall of the Galactic War College, looking out at an auditorium filled with officers from 60 different species. Some had scales, some had feathers. Some seemed to be made of energy or crystal. All of them watched him with intense focus. He had given this lecture 12 times now, and it still felt strange. A few months ago, he had been an unknown military advisor from a species nobody took seriously. Now he was teaching alien warriors how humans thought about combat. The first principle of human warfare is this, Jake said, his voice calm and measured. Never fight fair if you can avoid it. Fairness is a luxury for sports and games. In real combat, you use every advantage you have. A Kralon officer in the front row raised his clawed hand. But this contradicts the warrior code of honor. How can you call yourself a warrior if you do not face your enemy with equal terms? I do not call myself a warrior, Jake replied. I call myself a soldier. And a soldier's duty is not to die with honor. It is to complete the mission and go home alive. Honor does not help you if you are dead. This concept was difficult for many species to grasp. Galactic combat had evolved along lines of ritual and honor. Challenges were issued. Terms were agreed upon. Fights followed protocols. The idea of deliberately seeking unfair advantages was alien to them. Let me give you an example from Earth history, Jake continued. He pulled up an image of ancient human warfare. 3,000 years ago, a small city-state called Greece faced invasion by the massive Persian Empire. The Persians had hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The Greeks had a few thousand. By every measure, it was an impossible fight. The alien officers leaned forward, interested. The Greeks studied the terrain and found a narrow pass called Thermopylae. There, the Persian numbers meant nothing because only a few soldiers could fight at once. The Greeks held that pass for 3 days against an army 100 times their size. They used terrain, tactics, and determination to offset their disadvantage. But they lost, pointed out a luminary officer. They lost that battle. Jake agreed. But they bought time for Greece to prepare. They showed that the Persians could bleed. They turned a hopeless situation into a strategic advantage. That is human thinking. We ask not, can we win, but how can we win? There is always a way, if you are creative enough to find it. He showed them more examples. Vietnam, where guerrilla fighters defeated a technologically superior military. The American Revolution, where farmers and merchants beat professional soldiers. Ancient sieges, modern urban warfare, naval battles, air combat. Every example showed the same pattern. Humans finding ways to turn disadvantages into advantages. A senior officer from the Council's military command stood. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. This is valuable tactical information, but we must ask, are you not concerned that you are teaching potential enemies how humans think? Jake smiled slightly. Sir, if you are thinking like a potential enemy, then we have already failed at building the peace we want. I am teaching allies how to defend themselves more effectively. Besides, humans adapt. If our current tactics become known, we will develop new ones. That is what we do. The lecture continued for another hour. Jake covered principles of asymmetric warfare, the importance of intelligence gathering, the psychology of combat, and the ethics that guided human military action. That last part surprised many of the alien officers. You have rules about who you can fight and how? Asked an incredulous security chief. Even in war? Especially in war. Jake said firmly. We have the Geneva Conventions, the laws of armed conflict, and numerous treaties that govern how wars should be fought. We protect civilians. We treat prisoners humanely. We restrict certain weapons, because war without rules becomes slaughter, and slaughter serves no one. But if your enemy does not follow these rules, pressed the security chief, then we still follow them. Because the rules are not about the enemy. They are about us. About who we choose to be, even in the worst circumstances. Jake paused. Humans are capable of terrible violence. These rules remind us to be better than our worst impulses. The lecture ended with a standing ovation, though many species expressed this in different ways. Some applauded, some stamped their feet, some emitted harmonic tones. Jake simply nodded and left the stage, uncomfortable with the attention. Meanwhile, in a training facility on the other side of the galaxy, Amy Chen was having a very different experience teaching alien pilots. No, 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 she said for the 10th time, watching a luminary pilot execute a textbook evasive maneuver. That was perfect by the manual. It was also completely predictable. Any decent targeting computer would have shot you down. The luminary pilot, a being of shimmering light named Prism, flickered with confusion. But the manual says, this is the optimal evasion pattern. The manual assumes your enemy is also following a manual, Amy explained. Real combat is not about optimal patterns. It is about being unpredictable. Let me show you. She climbed into a training simulator and ran the same scenario. But instead of the smooth, efficient maneuvers the manual prescribed, she flew erratically. She changed direction randomly. She varied her speed without apparent pattern. She even flew directly at the enemy before spinning away at the last second. This seems chaotic, Prism observed. Exactly. Chaos is hard to predict, hard to target. My instructor used to say, fly like you are drunk, but think like you are sober. Make them guess what you will do next. Keep them off balance. Over the weeks, Amy's students learned to fly in ways that made tactical computers malfunction, trying to predict them. They learned to use debris, to exploit sensor blind spots, to turn system failures into tactical advantages. They learned to fly like humans. Creative, aggressive, and just a little bit crazy. Back on Earth, Lisa Kim sat in a conference room with President Carter and representatives from a dozen Earth nations. The holographic display showed requests from 40 different alien species, research partnerships, cultural exchanges, military training programs, economic treaties. We are receiving more requests than we can possibly fulfill, said the Secretary of State. Every species in the galaxy wants something from us now. Of course they do, Lisa said. We went from being dismissed as primitives to being seen as potential game changers in galactic politics. Everyone wants to know what else we can do that they have not thought of. President Carter looked tired but satisfied. The Council has formally granted us full membership. No probation, no restrictions. They even offered us a seat on the Security Subcommittee, because they want to keep us close, observed the Defense Secretary. They are not sure if we are friends or future threats. Then we prove we are friends, Carter said firmly. We share our knowledge, we help where we can, and we show them that humans can be trusted. Lisa nodded. I have been contacted by 17 universities across the galaxy. They want to study human biology, psychology, and culture. I think we should allow it. Transparency builds trust. Within limits, cautioned the intelligence director. We should not give away everything. Some things should remain Earth's advantage. The debate continued, but the decision was clear. Earth would engage with the galaxy fully, sharing freely while maintaining reasonable security. It was a delicate balance, but humans had always been good at adaptation. Across the galaxy, in a dark sector far from Council space, Captain Zrel of the Ravagers sat in his damaged flagship. The repairs were almost complete, but the damage to his reputation would take much longer to heal. The attack on the Zenith Prime had been a disaster. 14 fighters lost, 3 boarding parties killed or captured. The entire operation had fallen apart because of 2 humans. 2. His crew was scared now. They whispered about the demon humans, the species that fought like nothing else in the galaxy. Some wanted to avoid human space entirely. Others wanted revenge. Zrel had not decided which path to take, but he had learned something important. Humans were not to be underestimated. Next time, if there was a next time, he would be prepared. Meanwhile, on a frontier colony called New Austin, human settlers were building their new home. The colony was small, only a few thousand people, but they had big dreams: farms, schools, research stations, a spaceport. Security Chief Kevin Grant was reviewing the defense plans with his team. New Austin was far from Earth, far from Council protection. They were on their own. We have 12 armed civilians, basic sensor arrays, and 1 old shuttle with light weapons, said his deputy, Sarah Wells. If pirates attack, we are in trouble. Kevin smiled. Sarah, did you forget who we are? We are humans. We do not need fancy weapons or massive armies. We need good planning and the will to defend what is ours. He pulled up schematics of the colony. We turn the settlement into a fortress. Every building has firing positions. We set up sensor nets and early warning systems. We train every adult in basic combat. We prepare traps and ambushes. If anyone comes here looking for easy prey, they will learn the same lesson the Ravagers learned. The colonists began their preparations. They did not expect trouble, but they would be ready for it. That was the human way. 4 weeks later, Captain Zrel made his decision. He would have his revenge. He gathered what remained of his fleet and set course for New Austin. A small human colony, lightly defended, far from help, the perfect target to restore his reputation. When the Ravagers arrived in the New Austin system, they found the colony exactly as their intelligence described. Small, isolated, vulnerable. Zrel smiled. This would be easy. It was not easy. The colonists spotted the Ravager fleet while it was still hours away. They activated their defense plans and sent a distress signal that would not reach help for days. Then, they prepared to fight. The Ravagers expected the colonists to panic or surrender. Instead, they found organized resistance. The shuttles that launched were not evacuating. They were laying mines in the approach vector. The settlement's buildings were not hiding places. They were fortified positions with overlapping fields of fire. When the Ravagers landed their boarding parties, they walked into kill zones where every angle was covered. The colonists fought with weapons, ranging from military rifles to improvised explosives made from mining equipment. They used the terrain, used the buildings, used everything they had. A farmer named Carl Brooks took out an entire Ravager squad using his harvester as a weapon, crushing their dropship before it could deploy. A teacher named Michelle Torres organized the children's evacuation, while simultaneously coordinating defensive fire from 3 different positions. The battle lasted 8 hours. When Council security forces finally arrived, They found the Ravagers in full retreat, and the colony battered, but intact. The human casualties were surprisingly light. The Ravager casualties were devastating. Zrel escaped, but barely. As his ship jumped to hyperspace, he made a final log entry. Note to all Ravager captains: avoid human targets at all costs. They are not worth the losses. Repeat: avoid humans. The story of New Austin spread across the galaxy even faster than the Zenith Prime incident. This time, it was not soldiers or pilots. It was ordinary civilians, farmers and teachers and engineers, who had fought off professional pirates. The message was clear. Jake Morrison was not an exception. Amy Chen was not a rare talent. They were examples of what any human could become when pushed. Every human carried the same potential for stubborn, creative, relentless resistance. The Galactic Council held another emergency session. Vex Alar addressed the assembly with grave importance. We can no longer view humanity as a single species among thousands. Their capacity for adaptation and resistance is unprecedented. They must be treated as major players in galactic affairs. Thermal, Drakmor agreed enthusiastically. The Krallon Empire formally requests a military alliance with Earth. We would be honored to fight alongside such warriors. Other species made their own offers. Trade agreements, research partnerships, cultural exchanges. Everyone wanted a connection to humanity now. Not out of fear, but out of respect and curiosity. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison sat in a quiet park near his home, watching children play. One of them, a girl about 7 years old, was teaching the others a game that involved mock combat and tactical positioning. She was unconsciously demonstrating principles of flanking and cover. Lisa Kim sat down beside him. You are famous now. The warrior who changed the galaxy's understanding of humanity. Jake shook his head. I just did my job. Any soldier would have done the same. That is what makes it impressive, Lisa said. The galaxy sees you as exceptional. But we know you are just a normal human doing what humans do. Surviving, adapting, overcoming. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the children play their war game, not understanding that they were demonstrating the traits that had made humanity respected across the stars. What happens now? Jake asked. Now, we prove we are more than just fighters, Lisa said. We show them our science, our art, our compassion. We show them that the same species that can fight so fiercely can also build, create, and love just as fiercely. Jake nodded slowly. We become partners, not just warriors. Exactly. The sun set over Earth, casting long shadows across the park. Above them, invisible to the eye, ships from 100 worlds passed through Earth's system, now welcomed as friends, rather than feared as threats. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy not through conquest or domination, but through the simple demonstration of their true nature. A species that refused to give up, that turned every disadvantage into opportunity, that chose peace when possible but never backed down from necessary fights. The future was uncertain, as all futures are. There would be challenges, conflicts, and dangers. But humanity would face them the same way they had faced every challenge throughout their history. With creativity, determination, and the unshakable belief that there was always a way forward. In the Galactic Council chambers, a new plaque was placed beside Earth's official seat. It bore a quote that Vex Alar had chosen after studying human history and philosophy. Humanity. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, but we are still here, and we always will be. It was a promise, a warning, and an invitation, all in one. The age of humanity in the galaxy had begun.